Hello, and welcome to Zscaler's virtual CXO Summit. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Julia Cummings, and I am the Senior Executive Customer Programs Manager at Zscaler. Our program today is titled Adopting a Zero Trust Mindset, Enterprise Strategies for Digital Transformation. We are honored to be joined by some really fabulous speakers today who will be sharing intimate insights on their experiences driving digital transformation. We are looking forward to your participation in today's conversation. Please submit your questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen and engage with your peers throughout the conversation. If you have any technical questions, please reach out to cxosummit@zscaler.com. This is a public session and we will be sharing the recording with you all after the event. Please feel free to share and follow using the hashtag ZscalerCXOSummit. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce Zscaler SVP of APAC and Japan, Scott Robertson.
Thank you, Julia, and good afternoon and good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to our latest CXO Summit, Adopting a Zero Trust Mindset, Enterprise Strategies for Digital Transformation. According to threat intelligence from IBM, Asia Pacific was one of the most attacked markets in the world in 2021. In fact, it was the focus of 1 in 4 cyber attacks, with Japan, Australia, and India bearing the brunt of these threat actors' efforts. It's against this backdrop that we're meeting here today to discuss zero trust and its importance to the region. In the face of mounting cybersecurity or cyber attacks and increasingly sophisticated techniques, it's more important than ever that we entertain new ideas for protecting ourselves against our adversaries. I'm Scott Robertson, and I'm the SVP for Zscaler across Asia Pacific and Japan. And I'm honored that you've taken time out of your busy schedules to be with us here today. In a moment, we'll hear from our industry leader panel, including Vishwas Joshi and Rohit Adlakar. They'll share their personal experiences in communicating zero trust internally within the organization and share with us some of the challenges they've had to or at least overcome along the way. Following that, we'll hear from Paul C. and Mihir Thakkar to discuss best practices and benchmarking on zero trust in the CXO Perspectives panel. But first, let's kick off our industry leader panel. It's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Sudeep Banerjee, who will lead today's panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Scott, and for introducing the session. Welcome, all panelists, and thank you again for participating, and welcome all attendees. We'll kick off today's discussion with the industry panel, and I'm very pleased to welcome 2, heavyweights from the IT industry in India. So I've got Vishwas Joshi from TCS, and I've got Rohit Adlakar from Wipro. Welcome, gentlemen. And maybe starting off with Vishwas and then Rohit, could you just give a quick introduction? Of course, in India, we all know about these names, but since we have a fairly global audience today across APAC, about the company and your roles, please. Vishwas, over to you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me for this event. Excited to be part of this conversation. My name is Vishwas Joshi, part of Tata Consultancy Services, which I think it's a 600,000 plus organization from the user perspective, spread across multiple countries and supporting, I think, almost all the Fortune 500 organizations in their digital transformation. My role is part of the internal IT team, supporting the largest customer that we have, which is TCS, and ensuring that they could work, they could serve our customers. That is my primary role.
Thank you, Vishwas. Over to you, Rohit.
Thanks, Sudeep, and hi, friends. A very warm welcome from all of us. A quick backgrounder, I spent more than a lifetime, 25 and a half years in a company called Wipro, straight from college. And when I left the company about a year back, the joke was I had more CXO titles than the CEO himself. So I was the Chief Digital Officer, the CDO. I was a CIO leading IT. Keeping up the entrepreneurial spirit, I was also the Chief Automation Officer. So I was driving the automation and AI business for Wipro. So 3 CXO titles. And in the last 1 year, it's been an absolutely fabulous journey. I'm an independent advisor now, and Zscaler is one of the companies that I advise. The other two are startups. So like I said, the entrepreneurial blood is still there in me. They are in the area of AI and water sustainability. So very diverse group of companies that I advise. And we've heard of infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, and I'm driving what I call CXO as a service. So I'm actually doing multiple roles for different companies, right from brand building and thought leadership to product engineering, to sales and marketing, to customer success. So I wear all the hats and helping Zscaler scale beyond its $1 billion dream, which is already realized, to potentially the $10 billion dream, which is the next step. Thanks once again for joining in, and a pleasure to talk to you very soon.
Thank you, Rohit. Thank you, Vishwas, for the introductions. Diving on today to the industry panel discussion. So we are going to talk about zero trust, not in terms of what the technology stands for. We all have our own interpretations. It's I think after digital transformation, maybe zero trust is the most used, abused buzzword in the cybersecurity marketplace today. And we have got our own kind of vision behind zero trust, essentially in Zscaler. But we are going to talk today more on the deployment issues. So since we are talking to TCS and Wipro, institutions with hundreds of thousands of employees, users, and they not only protect their own company, but they're actually software suppliers to the world at large, right? So they have an onerous responsibility of not only keeping them safe and secure in these troubled times, but also to ensure that all their downstream clients are equally protected. So that's like a double responsibility. So when these size of companies go in for deployment of zero trust, what does it look like? Where do things start, right? Where does the idea germinate? Who all are influencing this decision? And finally, when there's a myriad of technology providers, right? Everybody is trying to ride the zero trust bandwagon. There's a lot of marketing hype and hoopla behind zero trust. So how do they pick the right kind of set of players to build their zero trust framework, right? And finally, when they go through the implementation, what does it look like? Because transforming organization which has built up its infrastructure, its security practices over decades, going for a radical transformation towards a zero trust mindset is kind of daunting to the IT leadership, I'm sure. So what are the baby steps? Where do they start from, and how do they develop a roadmap? Right. So that's the kind of context we want to set. So maybe Vishwa, starting off from you. TCS, as you mentioned, 600,000 people and growing strongly, right? A flagship of the Tata group in this country. Where did the zero trust thing germinate from? What was the kind of start of this idea for TCS?
Yeah, I think from a security perspective or IT services perspective, if we look at it, we started looking at zero trust, I think pre-pandemic. Last 2 years, it became kind of easier for IT folks to build security around. So security earlier was looked at as something which is an overhead, but now thanks to pandemic, I would say, it became the talking point even within, in all the boardrooms where the decisions were taking, the influences were there. So it was kind of easy for us to start the journey during the pandemic because if you look at it, the boundaries that we had, physical boundaries that we had, where the perimeter, the definition of perimeter got completely broken because people were working from home, people were accessing a lot of SaaS services. So what you constitute as an IT space for an enterprise was actually getting stretched across, whether it was from the services side or from the user side who are accessing this. The consumers and as well as the IT services, both was getting stretched. So the traditional way of protecting the IT or protecting the services and that's where the zero trust comes into picture, where you marry the IT part or the security part with the identity. I think that's where it made a very big difference, where the identity defined what you can access or what you cannot access, and what device you are accessing that services from. So I think it was a mix of both, and the orchestration around it. I think that helped us a lot in taking decision that this is the way we want to go ahead, and this is zero trust is the technology or the concept which would eventually help us meeting the stringent requirement, because we have all seen the kind of supply chain attacks that have happened for large organizations, and the downstream suppliers became the conduit. So it was a double responsibility for us to ensure that not only our infrastructure is safe, but also ensuring that we don't become a conduit for our large customers. So I think that's where it hit a sweet spot during the pandemic, I would say. And it was kind of easier for us to sail through, even with CXOs, because I think the resonance with them from a security perspective was very large in last 2 years.
Sure. Thanks for the context, Vishwas. And I am sure, being in IT services company, so at least the awareness of security, infrastructure, resilient processes, definitely in the CXO community would be kind of higher compared to many of the other, let's say, industries where maybe the business leadership side is not so well abreast with this kind of tech.
No, but I will tell you, even not just CXOs, but even the business leaders within the organization, the vertical leads, vertical heads, I think the sensitivity towards it was very, very high, purely because of the pandemic-based disruption that we saw. I think last 2 years, not just about zero trust, but overall the digital transformation that has happened is massive. I think what we were thinking about 4 years back, I think we could do it in last 1.5 years, thanks to pandemic. The positive side of pandemic, I would say.
Absolutely, and that's the story which is resonating across industries, across geographies. So as they say, never let a good crisis go to waste, right? Every crisis is an opportunity, and typically IT does more work in crisis times than in normal times. At least I've seen that in my own life as well. Turning over to you, Rohit, what's the Wipro story with zero trust? So I know you had that phenomenal coffee session with Jay, but apart from that, what kind of drove your mind and other leaders in Wipro towards this transformation?
So when I took over the role of the CIO in 2019 summer, and I was holidaying with our parents, I got a call from a CEO welcoming me to the role. And a lot of people actually told me, you've taken over the CIO role, and CIO actually means career is over. And he spent about an hour with me, the CEO from the US. And the only caution he gave me is that, Rohit, the only way you can lose your job is if there is a cyber attack on the company. That was the only strong message that he gave, apart from the welcome message. And I realized that security and risk had become a board level priority. Even though the board may not be understanding the nitty-gritties of protocols and various versions of SSL that we talk like bread and butter, but the fact is that reputation, the ability to manage a brand, and trust, which is what every company is based on, including ITS, became the cornerstone of all our discussions. So when I inherited the IT stack, we had about 70 different technology controls, right from perimeter to the end user. And within those 70, I think there would be at least 40 unique partners. So trying to manage this complex ecosystem and give an end-to-end security capability was one challenge. The second is that we were trying to unbreak, if I may use this word, a broken experience of the end user, because every time we talked about IT, it was us, the CIO team, which was at the center of the universe. But when we shifted gears to the end user, saying that anytime, any device, anywhere access, how do you actually provide a superlative experience? Like people use Amazon and Airbnb, so seamlessly in their personal world. How do you give that experience in the corporate world? The third switch you wanted to make is that how do we align IT and business much better, which means their objectives being IT objectives and vice versa. And fourth, of course, is that every transaction that you will do, an SAP financial closure at the end of the month or the quarter or the year, or sending an email on O365, everything should be absolutely secure. And that's where the idea of zero trust actually germinated. So people were aware, they were keen, but like every new concept, every new ideology has a lot of resistance internally. And there was a massive attack on one of the peer group companies, and that really accentuated the entire decision making. So very quickly, CEO was already on board, but the CFO, whose purse strings we had to open to get the budget out, the CHRO, because it became a brand issue, and new employee joining may actually become an issue. The COO was already super activated on this, because ultimately managing the operations of the company seamlessly and customer delivery could potentially get impacted if there is a cyber risk attack out there. So all in all, it converged very well. So there was little amount of selling that we had to do internally. It was just a conviction building, which we led from the front.
Wonderful. Okay.
And another interesting incident,
Yeah.
I was again on holiday and I met Jay at a coffee shop. Jay, if you know, ladies and gentlemen, is the CEO of Zscaler. And we had a common history because we belong to the same part of India where he's from. And in that 1 hour in the coffee shop, I think what got built was trust. It was not so much Zscaler as a company. It was not so much the product portfolio, but just a trust that here is a person who knows what he's talking about and you can potentially depend on the person. And that would be my key message to all of you, that cyber risk and security is based on trust, and trust starts with humans. So you have to depend on the company. If you're giving the keys of the kingdom to them, you have to depend on the people whom you interact with and trust them unduly before you let go of your control, as we call it in the IT sphere. All in all, a fantastic journey, and it's been one of the most successful implementations that we've done across the industry.
Thank you, Rohit, for the kind words and really important messages. I'll touch upon a few of them. You mentioned like bringing people like a CHRO on board, right? Because being in the IT company, you're always getting millennials and Gen Zs into the workforce, and they expect the world of like consumer IT, even from business IT, the same seamlessness, the same kind of information at the fingertips and everything working seamlessly, and that's the right expectation, right? That's one part. And you also mentioned like how do you build trust in this world of zero trust? And frankly, I also come from a customer. Prior to joining Zscaler, I was in financial services, and actually, similar interactions with Jay and reading up and how we had thought about this world, right? Where there's cloud, there's applications everywhere. Users need that freedom, flexibility, mobility. They want a choice of devices also to interact with business applications. And how do you do it, keeping security frontline and center, right? So that was the whole paradigm behind which this company and the platform was built. But coming on, again to the deployment part, fine. So you got the mind share, you got the budget. Vishwas, back to you. You also look into technology, finance. So IT, whatever decisions are there, I see in your role that you also manage that part, right? So how do you prioritize and how do you seek that kind of support? Did we just lose Vishwas? I'm not seeing in the panel. I think he's joining back. Yeah, Vishwas, sorry, we lost him momentarily, but I was coming at from a commercial standpoint, right? Companies such as yours, you have spent so much on infrastructure. You have built so much of gateways, taking traffic out to the internet. You've got offices around the world, people around the world, and there's a lot of kind of investment in that infra. So when you talk about kind of going to a different route, like looking at a cloud security platform, you possibly have to let go of a lot of those spends, right? They may not be useful going forward. How do you convince kind of management and CFOs and other leaders to walk that path? Any personal experience you can share with us?
You have asked a very, very difficult question. The kind of calls I had with them, it was tough. But I think what was more important, or what is more important, is the business outcome. Because the business outcome, as Rohit said, the the brand image, how fast you can, how fast you can go to market. All those things would play a different role. So it's not about I'm replacing X with Y, and then there's a sunken investment in X, and then how you will, there is a loss of that investment if I go to Y. But it's more about what it is bringing. So what kind of intangible benefits it is going to bring. So I think we had to create that business model in terms of how we eventually, how the organization going to benefit out of it, especially when the boundaries were expanding and people were working from anywhere. I think it was important that the normal perimeter security, whether it is IPS, firewall, all those things, we're losing the context in which we were started working in during the pandemic, right? So so I think it was creating that business model, the finance model, because I also manage the IT finance for internal IT. So I wear both hats. So I understand what CFO is talking to, and I have to convince him. So I think creating that business model and getting those business benefits is very important. So the left side and right side, I think right side, when you go more of these SaaS-based models, cloud-based models, I think what it brings is the scalability, what it brings in the orchestration that we can do, rather than having multiple gateways today in a traditional world we manage. Like you have firewalls at multiple places, and so all those operational overheads will go away because the orchestration model is one, the intelligence is sitting somewhere at one place, and you can orchestrate everything. You can integrate with your LDAP or Active Directory system so that it is more intuitive, more identity based. I think that all helped finally creating a model which we could sell it to CFO, because CEO, and as Rohit again said, CEO and COO were looking for it, obviously, but the money has to come from CFO. So creating those models, not just money part of it, but also the business benefit, I think that would make the right side more positive, which will make CFO happy. So I think that we did that. It was not an easy task, as I'm telling right now in 2 minutes. It took, I think, a couple of weeks to reach out to a model which we could then get CFO convinced. It was a bit of a heavy lifting, but yes, it did. I think adding those pointers, business benefits and brand benefits, all that, it does help.
I'm sure it does. So I spent a good number of years in insurance, and that's one product which never gets bought. It is sold, and it is often sold on fear. And I see that sometimes even in IT, we used to use that, to kind of convince management that what, all things are great. You're going digital, you are expanding ecosystem, you're doing so much of API integration, etc. If something wrong is to happen, all that years of good work will go down the drain in a jiffy, right? So that often kind of swung their attention and open up the money purses. So so thanks for bringing that up. Rohit, anything special in your experience in Wipro to convince management to go towards zero trust from a financial standpoint?
Actually, one is that financially we did some engineering together in terms of reducing the impact upfront, which is what people don't want to take a big impact on the P&L immediately. But what we did, I think, worked well is that we took a sample set of users from every group and we started doing pilots with them. So someone from service delivery, someone from HR, someone from finance. And we kept taking bits and pieces of applications and bits and pieces of infrastructure. So if I were to dwell a little bit on the Zscaler, product array, the ZIA, or very crudely put, the proxy was already there. From a few thousand people, we wanted to move it to 100,000 plus. So we took bits and pieces of people across different geographies and different departments so that then we could do a broad basing. And it took us about a month and a half to finish the pilot. And the same thing we did was with the ZPA private access from the application point of view. We took about 35 in wave 1, and we had more than 700 applications. So it was 5% sample size that we took. So we took not too many critical applications, so medium criticality, but having an impact on a larger set of people, for example, taking employee self-service, which is used by all 200,000 employees. And then, of course, all the configuration changes, the cloud access, the response time. I think that 1.5, 2 months of pilot that we did jointly along with Zscaler really made people much more confident. Of course, there was a mindset that we had to break because we also had our year-end closure, which was in March of 2020, just after the lockdown happened. So we had to do a combination of people physically going to office because they were still not very confident of being able to close books sitting remotely, because we had issues in terms of access of network at home, security. So we did a combination of people in office with special passes and people sitting remotely. And for the first time in the history of the company, we actually closed the results much before the deadline. Normally Wipro does around third week of April for a March financial year closure. And we ended up doing it within the first 10 days itself, the fastest closure and the first remote closure in the company history itself. That gave a massive amount of confidence. And I know for subsequent quarters, people were more comfortable sitting at home and closing because they had the right laptop, they had the right network, they had the right security posture, the right credentials and identity management. So we had settled it in the next 3 months. So I think the key here is buy-in and trust with every department, doing stepwise pilots, and then looking at how you can broad base and win confidence of the entire organization.
That's a brilliant piece, Rohit, because typically I see in the paucity of time, IT does a very narrow focused pilots, right? They will only put, like agents only on the IT user laptops, which choose 15, 20 people, and do only a subset of use cases that they really want to test. But I think this is great that you involve so many different departments, functions, geographies, and also did that sample selection of medium critical applications to prove that the technology works and it can scale. And that definitely gets you very quick buy-in from different parts of the business. So thanks for sharing that. And what we've also seen is any digital project, right? The longer it takes to roll out, the risk of the project is so much high. It's not about IT, it's about everything, right? If the timeline gets elongated, specs will change, users' expectations will change, the business itself may change, new products may come along the way, new clients may join in, and that queers the pitch. So the rollout and the pilots and everything has to be done in a super quick time. And cloud services typically, because you're not provisioning infrastructure, you're not buying additional maybe hardware or links or whatever. You're simply pointing traffic to a cloud platform, and that's doing the trick. So it's usually easier, and that also builds a lot of confidence in the company that things are working the way they should. Great. So all that is good, but let's talk about some of the pitfalls, some of the learnings, right? I'm sure there must have been hiccups, and IT is all about people, process, technology. Something can go wrong anytime, any place, right? So Vishwas, again, back to you. What would be some of the unique learnings that you can share with the group here?
I think biggest learning is ensuring the whole authorization piece, the creating the profiles, and then ensuring that the right profile is having the right access to the application. I think that is the crux of this whole ZPA or zero trust solution that we look at. And I think we spend more time there. I think it would be more and more seamless because we were first on ZIA and then eventually moved to ZPA. So switching out that switch was very easy. That was not a problem. But the problem was on the other side, where ensuring that who gets what access and creating that metrics. I think that is important. So in our case, the distinct users, like whether it is a finance user or an
I think you're having a little bit of issue.
User, it's very. Just give me a second. So
No
maybe
worries.
Rohit can answer and then.
Sure. I'll switch it back to Rohit, but I think Vishwas, you started a good context, which is the entire identity, which is starting and a kind of hallmark for zero trust, right? So, and having complex organizations, having a one single identity system for users, for applications, for servers, and whatnot, is often a requirement, but it's very difficult to accomplish. So that definitely is a place where we should look into close before we start a zero trust journey. But Rohit, back to you. Learnings, issues, challenges that you want to share.
I think the overarching problem was control versus outsource. Very interestingly, when you were looking at zero trust as a concept, a lot of people internally said that we can even build the system internally. Why do you want to outsource? So that was the first internal mindset challenge of the IT team, because they were so strong technically that they could actually go back and punch holes in every solution, and they wanted 100% perfect fit to be built internally so that we have full IP control and full technology deployment control. And then we had to convince them that it's better to look at a mix and match of control where you outsource some and you retain some. So that was the first internal mindset challenge that we faced. The second one was that if you're working with, let's say, a ZPA solution like a gateway, where the keys of a kingdom are passed on to a cloud solution which doesn't reside within your premises, and access depends on which geography you belong to, how do you depend on scalability? Suddenly the number of transactions goes up higher when you have a batch of 10,000 people joining you. How do you take care of critical transactions during quarter or month end closure? How do you take care of attacks which have their spikes, depending on which part of the year you're in? The number of attacks, and especially if you've seen during the Russia-Ukraine crisis, the number of attacks have gone up significantly. How do you take care of those spikes and make sure that a partner is able to scale without breakdown? And even if they're committing 4 nines, is that good enough to keep your infrastructure and applications up? So depending on a partner to provide you uptime and response and repair time was a second mindset challenge that we had to break through. The third was that how do you get the best of knowledge from a services standpoint on what has worked well with other customers, and you don't repeat those mistakes back. For example, which application do you choose? How do you convert the C name and A name, if you're familiar with, in terms of the IP addressing scheme? How do you manage that itself? How long should you run the pilot for? These are all which have been done dime a dozen by other companies. So how do you take the best practices and ensure that you don't repeat and your learning curve is that much smaller? And the last is, a lot of people ask that how do you quantify the benefits? You mentioned about insurance, you mentioned about risk. How do you go back and say that you've implemented zero trust and you've avoided 10 major cyber attacks because you keep getting your logs, especially in terms of lateral transfers, because it hides somewhere within your network itself? But how do you quantify that to a brand impact? How do you quantify it to a revenue impact? I think your ability to look at technology deployment versus an organization goal in a quantifiable term was the fourth challenge that we had to overcome. But all in all, I think it was a step journey. Everyone stepped in at the right time, and it was a successful implementation despite the glitches.
Fantastic. Very good kind of process-driven approach to that. If I boil it down to just one kind of unique challenge, that I think it's a mindset challenge, and that's always there, because somewhere when you are outsourcing security to a third party, that to a cloud service, there could be a potential feeling that there's a loss of control. For example, if I had managed my firewall estate, I know if something is going wrong, I'm going to get a call, I'm going to jump in, I'll solve the problem, etc. But now everything is gone. There's no more box in my data center, and it's all happening on a kind of multi-tenant cloud. And there could be a sense that the control is not there, or you have to learn new tricks of the trade, right? Earlier, the entire world was focused upon how do you protect the network, how do you protect things using 5-tuple stuff like IP address port protocol. but suddenly, you have identity. Suddenly you have granular access control. You have to know who your users are. You have to know what your applications are. Often it is very difficult, right? When we talk to companies, when you ask them how many internal applications you have which are internet facing, people struggle with that. It's difficult in complex orgs, and all of that is brought kind of closure through data, through analytics, because when the data is traversing the cloud, you gather all the metadata around it, and you can use you can help profile. In fact, Zscaler is trying to kind of now build on AI and ML to automatically suggest you policies. Because manually configuring policy vis-a-vis a system, understanding the data underneath, suggesting something that could be like a exoskeleton to help you do your job better. So wonderful, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vishwas.
Yeah. So just to add, I think two things. Earlier it was all IP based. I don't know. Am I audible?
You're audible, Vishwas. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So everything was IP based. So the analytics, everything was around IP and how that IP is getting. Now it is becoming identity. So even your analytics, the log collection and analytics has to change. I think that is one thing which we learned over a period of time, because IP gets irrelevant now. It's all about, are you able to track back to a user who is coming over the network and accessing a service. So that was one change which we looked at. The other thing is I forgot that point, but I will come back whenever I recollect. But the other thing is, I think when you are actually outsourcing or partnering with especially on the security side, choosing the right partner is very important, because the supply chain attacks which I talked about, these guys can become the the conduit for your infrastructure to get compromised. So I think selecting partner for these kind of things is very, very critical. Ensuring that you select the right partner is life and death situation, if you see from the enterprise IT infrastructure perspective. So I think we chose the right partner right now, and we will continue to work with Zscaler. I think we will love to see what you talked about, Sudeep, in terms of creating those profiles, auto generating those profiles. I think that would take us a long way in whole automation and intuitiveness to this service, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole purpose of kind of traversing through so much trillions of data points on a daily basis and then finding sense out of that, right? So great. We are just about 5 minutes before I hand over to my colleague Heng. So Julia, if there are any questions, we can take them here. I'm not seeing anything on the Q&A panel, etc. So maybe audience, would you like to ask us anything? Well, if not, we can always take some questions after the next panel. So thank you very much, Vishwas. Thank you very much, Rohit, for openly sharing so much of great learning, and I'm sure the audience would take good amount of inputs from this talk. Thank you both very much. And now over to my colleague Heng, who's the APJ CISO, and Heng is going to talk about securing the future of work with other panel members. Over to you, Heng.